The rehabilitation center was quiet on Sunday afternoons. Most families visited in the mornings, leaving the hallways empty by 2 p.m. That's when 12-year-old Marcus Webb did his volunteer work, pushing patients in wheelchairs to the garden, reading to those who couldn't see well anymore, helping where staff was stretched thin. Marcus had been volunteering at Riverside Rehabilitation for 6 months, ever since his mother started working there as a nurse's aide. They couldn't afford childcare, so she brought him along on weekends. Marcus had made himself useful instead of being in the way. Today he was reading to Mrs. Patterson in the sunroom when he heard the voice. Rich, confident, unmistakably expensive in the way voices get when someone has never been told no. "Darling, I brought you the magazines you asked for. And I spoke to the doctor about that experimental treatment in Switzerland. We'll fly you there next month." Marcus looked up. A man in his early 40s stood in the doorway of room 237. Tall, well-dressed, the kind of presence that made everyone notice. This was James Whitmore, tech mogul, worth about $900 million. Marcus knew because the nurses gossiped about the generous donations he made to the facility. In the wheelchair by the window sat Grace Chen, 28, beautiful even in her medical gown, her black hair pulled back simply. She'd been at Riverside for 8 months following a car accident, lower spine injury. The official story was that she'd never walk again. Marcus knew better. He'd seen Grace walking, late at night when she thought no one was looking. 3 weeks ago, around midnight when Marcus's mom was working a double shift and he was doing homework in the staff break room, he'd gotten lost looking for the bathroom. He'd seen Grace through a doorway, standing at the parallel bars, taking careful steps, practicing, walking. And he'd seen James's fiancée, Ashley Monroe, watching from the doorway with an expression that made Marcus's blood run cold. Not happy that Grace was improving, angry, Marcus had hidden, confused. Over the next weeks, he'd piece together what was happening by listening to conversations, watching interactions, understanding what the adults around him didn't realize a kid would notice. Now, watching James fuss over Grace in her wheelchair, Marcus felt sick. This man clearly loved her, and she was lying to him, or more accurately, being forced to lie to him. After James left, Marcus knocked on Grace's door. "Hi, I'm Marcus. I volunteer here on weekends. Can I get you anything?" Grace smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "No, thank you. I'm fine." "I saw you walking," Marcus said quietly. 3 weeks ago. Late at night. I saw you at the parallel bars. You can walk." Grace's face went white. "You're mistaken. I can't. I also saw Miss Ashley watching you, and I saw how scared you looked when you saw her." Marcus stepped closer. "Why are you pretending you can't walk? Why are you lying to Mr. Whitmore?" Grace stared at this child who just shattered her carefully maintained pretense. "You don't understand. It's complicated." "Is she threatening you?" Marcus asked. "Miss Ashley? Is she making you stay in the wheelchair?" Grace's eyes filled with tears. "You need to forget what you saw, please. For your own safety and mine, just forget it." But Marcus couldn't forget it. Over the next week, he watched more carefully. He saw how Ashley visited Grace when James wasn't there, how she'd whisper things that made Grace flinch, how Grace would be animated and hopeful until Ashley arrived, then become withdrawn and defeated. He also learned more about their history. Grace and James had been together for 2 years, engaged for 6 months, planning a wedding when the accident happened. Ashley was James's ex-girlfriend from 5 years ago, had come back into his life to support him during Grace's recovery. Now Ashley and James were engaged instead, the wedding planned for 2 months from now. Everyone thought it was beautiful how James had moved on, with someone who understood him while still caring for Grace as a friend, still paying all her medical bills even though their romantic relationship had ended. Marcus thought it was wrong, really wrong. 10 days after his first conversation with Grace, Marcus did something risky. He approached James Whitmore in the parking lot. "Mr. Whitmore, sir, I need to tell you something about Miss Grace." James looked down at this kid who'd appeared out of nowhere. "Do I know you?" "I'm Marcus Webb. My mom works here. I volunteer on weekends, and I need to tell you something important about Grace. She can walk. Your fiancé won't let her." James stared at him. "What are you talking about? Grace has a spinal injury. She's wheelchair-bound. The doctors have been very clear." She can walk, Marcus repeated. I saw her 3 weeks ago, late at night, practicing on the parallel bars. She was taking steps, real steps, and Miss Ashley was watching her with this really scary look on her face. And since then, Grace has been pretending she can't walk, but she can. She's lying because she's scared. That's ridiculous, James said, but his voice was uncertain. Why would Grace pretend to be paralyzed? I don't know exactly, Marcus admitted, but I think Miss Ashley is threatening her somehow, making her stay in the wheelchair so she can't get better, so she can't have you back. James crouched down to Marcus's level. Kid, that's a serious accusation. Do you understand what you're saying? You're claiming that my fiancé is threatening someone and forcing them to fake a disability. I'm saying Miss Grace can walk and she's not walking because she's scared, Marcus said firmly. I don't know all the reasons, but I know what I saw and I know Miss Ashley is bad. I can tell. Kids can always tell when adults are bad, even when other adults can't. Something in James's expression shifted. When did you say? You saw Grace walking? 3 weeks ago, around midnight. I was doing homework in the staff break room because my mom was working a double shift. And Ashley was there, watching from a doorway. She didn't see me see her, but I saw the way she looked at Grace. Like she was angry Grace was getting better. James stood slowly. Thank you, Marcus. I'm going to look into this. Please don't tell anyone I told you, Marcus said nervously. If Miss Ashley finds out, she might... I won't mention you. James promised you have my word that evening. James did something he'd never done before. He arrived at Riverside at 11 p.m., unannounced. The night nurse was surprised but let him in. He went to Grace's room quietly. She was asleep. He settled into the chair in her room and waited. At 1:15 a.m., Grace woke up. She looked around carefully, then got out of bed. James watched in shock as she stood, steadied herself, and walked slowly to the bathroom. Walked. Clear, deliberate steps. When she came out, she saw him. The color drained from her face. James, I didn't know you were here. Apparently not, James said, his voice carefully controlled. How long have you been able to walk? Grace sank back onto the bed, her face crumpling. 8 weeks. The feeling started coming back around then. I've been practicing at night, getting stronger. And you didn't tell me? Grace, I've been researching experimental treatments, talking to specialists around the world. I was planning to spend $500,000 to fly you to Switzerland next month. And you can already walk? I wanted to tell you, Grace said, tears streaming. I wanted to tell you so badly. Then why didn't you? Grace looked at the door, terror in her eyes. Because Ashley said if I told you, if I showed anyone I was recovering, she'd destroy my family. She knows things, James. Private things about my father's business. Illegal things. She has evidence that could send him to prison. She said if I didn't stay in this wheelchair, if I didn't stay out of your life, she'd ruin my entire family. James felt cold fury building. When did this start? The day I first stood up. She was here visiting you. She saw me through the window. She came back that night and told me if I ever walked again in front of anyone, she'd destroy everything I loved. Grace's voice broke. I couldn't let her hurt my family. I couldn't. So I stayed in the chair. I let you think I was paralyzed. I let you go. Because keeping you meant destroying everyone else I love. James pulled out his phone and called his head of security. I need you to investigate Ashley Monroe. Everything. Every communication, every financial record. Everything she's done in the last 8 months. I think she's been blackmailing someone. He looked at Grace. What does she have on your father? Evidence of tax fraud from 10 years ago, before the company went legitimate. She somehow got documents that would prove he evaded taxes on foreign accounts. The statute of limitations hasn't run out yet. He'd go to prison. James made another call. Robert, I need you. Bring the legal team. We have a blackmail situation that needs to be resolved tonight. Over the next hours, James's security and legal teams descended on Riverside. They gathered evidence, made calls, and built a case. By morning, they had everything they needed. Ashley Monroe was arrested at 7 a.m. The evidence against her was overwhelming. Not just the blackmail of Grace, but a history of similar schemes against other wealthy men she'd dated. She'd been running this operation for years, finding vulnerable people connected to wealthy targets and extorting them. The evidence she had against Grace's father was legitimate. But James's lawyers negotiated a deal, full disclosure and payment of back taxes with penalties in exchange for no prosecution. Grace's father agreed immediately. Ashley was charged with multiple counts of extortion, blackmail, and fraud. She'd spend the next decade in prison. 3 days later, James returned to Riverside. Grace was in her room, no longer pretending. She stood when he entered. "I'm so sorry," Grace said. "I should have told you, should have trusted you to help. Instead, I lied and let you think I'd never recover." "You were protecting your family," James said. "I understand why you did it. But Grace, did you stop loving me? Is that why you let me go with Ashley? Or was it all the blackmail?" "I never stopped loving you," Grace said. "Breaking our engagement was the hardest thing I've ever done. But I thought I had no choice. I thought staying with you meant destroying my family." James crossed the room and took her hands. "Marcus Webb is 12 years old, a kid who volunteers here on weekends. He saw through Ashley when I couldn't. He had the courage to tell me what he saw even though he was scared. A 12-year-old showed more courage and insight than I did." He pulled a small box from his pocket. Grace's original engagement ring, the one she'd given back 8 months ago. "I'm asking again. Will you marry me? Really marry me this time, with no blackmail, no lies, nothing but the truth between us?" "Yes," Grace whispered. "Yes, absolutely yes." 6 months later, at their wedding, Marcus sat in the front row with his mother. When James gave his speech, he told the whole story. About the brave kid who saw the truth and risked everything to expose it. "Marcus taught me that courage doesn't require age or money or power," James said. "It just requires caring enough to speak up when you see something wrong. Thank you, Marcus, for giving me back the woman I love. And thank you for teaching me that sometimes the most important voices are the ones we're least likely to listen to." After the ceremony, James handed Marcus an envelope. Inside was a check for $50,000 and a letter of guaranteed admission to any college in the country, with full scholarship courtesy of the Whitmore Foundation. "This is too much," Marcus's mother protested. "It's not nearly enough," James said. "Your son saved 2 people's lives. Grace's and mine. He saw what adults missed. He had courage when it cost him something. That deserves to be rewarded." He looked at Marcus. "You're going to do amazing things in your life. Thank you for starting by saving mine. If this story inspired you, please like, share, and subscribe for more stories about finding courage, regardless of age. Comment below about a time someone young taught you something important. Your story might remind others that wisdom has no age requirement.